Michael, hello to you. Thank you very much for getting in touch. He asks the following. Tottenham look great under Thomas Frank so far. However, Ange's Tottenham also started very well. With the Champions League returning this week, do you think Spurs have enough to sustain their form throughout the season? Now, before I chuck it over to you guys, I'll just remind people that when Ange took over in the summer of 2023, they started the season very well. I think they were undefeated in their first 10 or 11 games before they went on a bit of a wobble. And it became a bit inconsistent after that. But it did start very, very well. I remember around October time, people saying, Spurs are going to actually do something remarkable this season. However, 6th November, they lose 4-1 at home to Chelsea in that game we will talk about. It felt like they were starting to get a bit tired from then on, and things didn't really deviate too much from there. But so is there any difference between this and Ange under Frank? And will the Champions League thing be a kind of litmus test for them?
Yeah. By the way, I always say when you mention that Chelsea one, they were down to 9 men, and I actually like the way they equipped themselves.
Then they followed up with a 2-1 defeat to Wolves, and they lost 2-1 at home to Aston Villa.
Yeah, they weren't as good.
Shortly after that, they lost 2-1 at home to West Ham as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can prove anything with fact.
Shouldn't miss out the fact they drew 3-3 with Man City as well.
Yeah, but the fact is they nearly qualified for Champions League football, and it all went into that game, didn't it, at home to Manchester City. If we win, we'll do Arsenal a favour, and there was all that.
But it's a crucial question, chiefly because that season there was no European football for Spurs.
There wasn't. But Ange is gone and Frank's in. And Frank, we talk about being... Frank being a great pragmatist. But pragmatist is not a dirty word, Jim.
It's not. Crevice is a dirty word.
A good example of one.
Yeah.
If you've got any of your own, Jim, please say them. Otherwise...
Shit stain.
Otherwise, forever hold
Gulch. Come on.
What's that?
I don't know.
Just sounds gross, doesn't it?
Yeah,
okay, fair enough.
Onomatopoeic, you would say.
You would. Thomas Frank has very limited experience of European football.
Qualification phases for the Europa League with Brondby.
Well, okay, there you go. It's good. Yeah, good to cast our minds back to that.
Yeah. Well, I didn't think any of you would forget it for a second.
No.
But just in case.
We covered it extensively at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah. So obviously, so we expected him to do well at Spurs in terms of the Premier League.
Steve Cooper's Brondby, I should have said, by the way.
But they were Thomas Franks at the time.
But now Steve Cooper's.
We thought, he'll translate what he's done at Brentford will translate to Spurs in the Premier League. What's he then going to do with Spurs in Europe? Thomas Frank, though, gives off a big vibe. It's a big vibe. It's a massive vibe.
That's just the hair.
Yeah.
It's a Timotei advert.
It's a great vibe he's got. He does not look intimidated by anything.
No.
And this was seen when Spurs played PSG in the Super Cup.
They were really close. Yeah, they were
so
really
close, and they equipped themselves really well. Now, people might say, yeah, but PSG, I'm not saying Spurs are as good as PSG. Clearly not. PSG are one of the favourites, or perhaps the favourite to win the Champions League and retain their crown. And I understand PSG came into that game having pretty much no pre-season. They had the Club World Cup. They would have been knackered, etc., etc. But
Spurs were fantastic.
They were brilliant.
Most of that game.
And I was gutted for them that they didn't get over the line. They lost on penalties. But it showed you what he can do. And that's the thing with Frank. We keep saying this. Every few days or however the games come thick and fast, he manages to mix it up tactically. Look at them against West Ham. He plays Joao Palhinha there. Palhinha hasn't started every game, but he's played a bit for Spurs. He's in there, bang, does his linchpin role very, very good, as he was against Manchester City when they played them. Richarlison didn't even play against West Ham. He didn't start the game. Tell did. Now, Tell is not in the squad for the Champions League. Tell and Maddison are not in there. Now, Maddison, understandably, because of an injury. But this is what I mean with Thomas Frank. He's left out a guy who cost them 30-odd million quid, who was gutted, who's a good up-and-coming player. There's a reason why they signed him from Bayern Munich. And Frank's gone, look, you know what, pal? You're going to start a Premier League game against West Ham. I'm not going to pick you. What that says to me is Frank, his attention to the detail and the personnel and what he's already looked at in those fixtures, he has a plan. So can start, do enough. The question is, have they got enough to sustain their form throughout the season? I absolutely think that. They had a great transfer window. They've got a bit of depth in that squad. And already you're seeing the likes of the obvious one, Richarlison, rejuvenated under him. And a good man manager. Look at what he got out of those players against Brentford. It doesn't seem that so far, again, a small sample size, but so far it doesn't seem to be that there's a chasm between Brentford and Spurs in the terms of you go into the smaller club and because there's maybe... I don't necessarily have to use the word ego, but maybe the egos aren't so big. The experience of those players isn't so huge. They're more likely to go with the manager. We've seen this before so many times when, like take dear old Roy Hodgson. He can do it at Fulham. Did all right other places, Crystal Palace. Yeah, when he goes to Liverpool, maybe David Moyes when he goes to Manchester United, he's saying, right, well, this is the template I've used here and there, and the players are going, this is Man United, mate. What are you talking about? There doesn't seem to be any. That's what I mean by the vibe with Thomas Frank.
And also that comes back to the pragmatism of Frank.
Exactly,
doesn't it? He will use the tools in his toolbox to craft a thing that is, essentially going to be the best out of those materials.
Yes, and the personality and the aura and from what I understand, the emotional intelligence of the man and so on and so forth. I think he's a very, very impressive individual. And as I say, it translates. Man United will be gutted that they didn't really go after him when he was being linked there, you would say. So with Frank, I'm not saying he's going to end up managing, Barcelona anytime, but I think it all just bodes very, very well.
But it's still a challenge.
It's still a challenge.
You got to look at the other side of the ledger, which says that it's a challenge.
Yeah,
he's not experienced it before in this depth and at this level. Spurs, they've done well in patches in the Champions League, of course. Been to a final and all the rest of it. But they've set themselves up, Spurs, as a team in terms of their stadium and their resources and the way they do things to be one of the top clubs. Right? There's a reason. Yeah, everyone's got their own reasons. But there was a reason why they were,
invited to the Super League,
enthusiastic about the Super League.
Yes,
but they haven't consistently been in the Champions League as much as they would have liked. They need to see this as a step towards that, but it comes with its own challenges for sure. There's loads more games to play. Straight off the bat, you've got to play whatever it is, 8 more games. You would expect, you want to progress. I mean, you think at the teams they've got to play, they would expect to progress. But I also agree that they've definitely strengthened with the personnel they've brought in. But here's the kicker. The kicker is not just necessarily the fact that you bring extra players in. It's blending all those players in the team. I think your interesting point about Matisse Tell there is a good one. But you've got to get the players to be able to perform every few days, basically. If you look at the situation Spurs find themselves in now, they've got 5 games between now, 5 more games between now and the end of September, right? Play on the 16th, the 20th, the 24th, the 27th, and the 30th. Okay, it comes thick and fast. He's got to not just be a great manager and a great pragmatist and a great guy. He's just got to be able to manage the up and down of that, the travel, all that type of stuff. There's going to be injuries at some point as well. I think he's a really exciting manager, Frank, and I think he can do great things at Spurs. And I've been super impressed with them so far this season. Bit of a weird blip in the home game against Bournemouth.
But Bournemouth have been brilliant themselves.
Bournemouth have been really good. Maybe in time that will start to say more about Bournemouth than it will about Spurs.
But it's the only goal they conceded this season. It's 4 games in.
But one thing's absolutely clear, he is not Ange Postecoglou, and he is definitely going to manage them in a different way. And I think that should be seen as a positive.
And I think part of the potential benefits of that are that fitness was a massive issue for Spurs last season, and people talk a lot about the intense training methods that Postecoglou uses, and that came back to bite them. Particularly
he basically wrapped his hand in on the league. Like, there's no way Frank's going to get away with that.
No, absolutely not.
But, so they've got to change that.
But if they are kind of, I suppose, let's say luckier with injuries this season, that's going to make a massive, massive difference. I think Frank is probably more likely to manage that in a way that isn't going to be putting them under so much strain. I think
Jim, sorry to cut in, but what percentage of injuries are bad luck?
Yeah, well, this is it. I
what do you think, though? It's an interesting
question.
Well,
I mean, so some impact injuries that happen in matches are and in training are inevitable. But the talk wasn't there, that the training methods that Postecoglou uses, and we've already heard Forest players talking about how it's a lot more intense now, over time leads to players breaking down and hamstring injuries in particular. Totally. And we saw that happen a lot at Tottenham. And what I'm saying is that seems less likely to happen under Frank, right? And that's going to stand them in good stead. And the question is essentially about their ability to go the whole way through the season and sustain this form. And I think Frank looks like a manager who will be smart about that stuff. You mentioned, and again, coming back to Taylor, it's a really, really good point that he's a player who can help them in the league when other players are maybe needing a little bit of a rest because of their sort of European exploits. And it's 4 games in, right? So you have to caveat that. There are so many challenges ahead with kind of little bumps of bad form, with injuries, with European travel and those condensed 3-game weeks that you often get. But I do feel like they're in a really, really good spot in terms of certainly qualifying for the Champions League again, for sure.
There's got to be a goal.
There has to be a goal, and I think it's a realistic one because the squad looks fresh, dynamic, motivated. Like you talk about the Frank vibes, he really brings that. This feels like a kind of modern version of Pochettino coming in. that sense of excitement. He's come from a club where he's achieved a lot, and you think this guy is ready for the next step. That doesn't always work. It's very difficult for managers to kind of make that leap sometimes. But this looks a really good fit, and I think that they have a really, really good chance of sustaining.
I think the big difference between Frank and Ange straight away could kind of be summed up by that Lucas Bergvall header against West Ham at the weekend,
which was a great goal.
It's a brilliant header. We probably did him a bit of a disservice not mentioning it yesterday, but if Lucas Bergvall scored that header under Ange Postecoglou, they would have lost the game 3-2. Everyone would have been complaining, but then the caveat would have been, oh yeah, but look at the young players who are coming. Look at Bergvall. Look at how good he looks. Kind of thing. As it stands under Frank, it seems Bergvall plays anyway, scores a great goal. No one mentions it because the whole thing keeps on rolling, and that's a much more positive way to be talking about Spurs than maybe how it came under Ange. However, when Ange Postecoglou first came in, as we've already mentioned, it was quite similar at the start. The point of the question to me, though, is that Michael's obviously spotted, and as many people have, that they weren't able to do it on more than one front last season. They had to gamble and go on the Europa League run. To be fair to them, they won the Europa League, but the Premier League campaign
was a disgrace.
It was absolutely disgracefully
It was
bad.
like disgraceful to the paying Spurs fans.
Correct.
I'd go as far to say, I really would.
This is a better squad with a manager who is approaching it in a very different way, though, I think. And also, it's interesting that you mentioned Bergvall, because I think players like Bergvall and Jed Spence as well, and a few others, will really have learned from being forged in the particular fire of last season.
Yeah,
so that's another sort of string to their bow there, I think.
I think Thomas Frank is the manager that a lot of other managers think they are.
Oh, nice.
In that he's very eloquent, he's very good in front of the camera.
Brilliant hair.
Great hair.
Yeah.
And tactically and so on can mix it up, but it's effective with Frank. And I think the only surprising thing...
And it's versatile.
Yes, I suspect, and I'm talking, talking Frank up big, and I, could come in for some scrutiny in a few months' time if it all goes to crap. But I'm so confident it won't, that Frank, I think we may look back and think, blimey, how come he never made a move away from Brentford sooner? That's no disrespect. In fact, it's kudos to Brentford, and it shows you the loyalty perhaps he had. But yeah, anyway, I think we've answered your question there, Michael. Now, before we go for a break, I want to say that last week on the mailbag, Pete launched a campaign to find the England fan who shouted, "Come on, England!" Remember that guy?
Good impression.
How can I forget that guy when I'm on this show? Do I remember that guy?
I was speaking to the listeners.
How can they forget that guy?
Tell us something your mum doesn't know. To give the full thing. We all know him. We love him. Well, thanks to the power of social media, which finally has been used for good in these troubled times, we found him. His name is Jamie, and he replied to our Instagram wanted poster saying, "Still going," laughing emoji, "does my head in now." It doesn't ask Jamie. There is one drawback, though, and this is where you've got to be careful with this stuff. Sometimes you should leave things alone. In his profile picture, he is playing rugby.
He can play rugby if he wants.
Tossing the pill with Chelsea.
Let's hope it's ironic.
Look, whether Jamie likes it or not, he is a national treasure. He is. Right? He's the thinking man's version of the bloke that put a flare up his arse.
He is.
And that's a good thing.
Absolutely. He's also got a private Instagram, which is disappointing.
Yeah, thinking man. Yeah.
I wanted to have a look.
Yeah, compared to that guy, Jim. Yeah, I think that's fair. All right, coming up with this, it is finally time to return to the 90s. In the words of Frank Carson, "I've got a question, Noel." This is from Jack.
So unnecessary, isn't it?
But welcome.
We haven't even got to the 90s bit yet. This is from Jack on Patreon. Do Bournemouth already look nailed on to be this season's overachievers?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we should take it back to, urging caution about it only being 4 games in, right? Because it doesn't take very long for a spell of really, really good form to feel like it was ages ago. Yes. If they have 3 bad results in a row, then you start to wonder, was that just a bit of a false dawn? Was it kind of early season freshness, etc., etc., etc.? And the wear and tear of the season tests your squad, doesn't it? And it is really, really very much a squad game now. But I think the pros for the argument are, similarly to Spurs, is that they have a very, very good manager who sets them up incredibly well and has had to deal with 4 of last season's 5 defenders, if you include the goalkeeper, not being around anymore. And they barely noticed. Like it's been absolutely seamless, that transition.
And the defender was sent off for Real Madrid in the weekend.
He was, yeah. So who has the last laugh now? Andoni Iraola.
Don't you have to kind of think more holistically about what overachievement looks like for Bournemouth now, though? And the reason I say that is because, yes, they are, relatively speaking, historically a small club. Yes, their stadium is small. But
the mentality's big, Luke.
It is. Their ambitions are big. But if you look at what they've done, so last season they finished 9th. Season before that they finished 12th. They've been in the Premier League for a little while now. They have spent, if you want to compare them to Manchester United, then fine, they haven't spent that much money. But they have spent a lot of money. I mean, if you look at the seasons, last 3, just the seasons under Iraola, if you like, they're paying kind of quite big money for players. And yes, admittedly, they're selling some of these players on for big money as well. Dean Huyson,
but they're a Premier League club. They're going to spend big money.
Sure.
People know the Premier League's got money. They have the money, so
of course,
they're going to spend it.
I'm just asking you guys a very simple question, right? If we're going to talk about what overachievement looks like for Bournemouth, we first need to establish what achievement looks like. And they finished 9th last season. So what represents achievement for them this season, given they've been improving year on year under Iraola?
Well, it has to be a Europa League place, really, doesn't it? Europa League or Champions League, which is hard. Very hard for them to get that.
I think if they got Champions League, that would be a huge overachievement.
But that's what I mean, yeah.
Well, I think that you're right to mention the manager. Keeping the manager was absolutely crucial.
And Semenyo as well.
Semenyo is
getting him on a
absolutely,
new deal was massive, yeah.
When Kirkish went, everyone knew he was going to go, really. And who have they signed? Is it
Truffert?
He looks like he's settled to it very, very well.
Yeah, their scouting's obviously exceptional, isn't it?
Indeed. And so, and Evan Nielsen's still there, and a brilliant forward as well. Yeah,
so they've got a really, really good set of forward players.
And under Iraola, they look like the type of club who can attract players, and you can say, look, come to Bournemouth. We've got this guy. You're going to come in. You will improve. It's the complete opposite of Manchester United. That they've got that kind of, like Brentford, you might say still have. Maybe Jordan Henderson will be improved. But Brentford have that sort of vibe in the last few years, or Brighton, a player who has serious ambitions, could go to Bournemouth. And this is by no means disrespectful at all. It is how the ecosystem works, is play for us for a couple of years and you'll get a big move somewhere, like a stepping stone. Because a stepping stone club means you're doing something right.
Yeah.
Last season, everyone said, that squad is going to be dismantled because everyone's going to want a piece of them. Well, they've lost 2 big players, but look at them. The results have been pretty good.
I also like the way that so there's a few teams in that little slot of being a really well-run club that do really well and overachieve by their own standards, despite what I said earlier. I do get the point of the question. There's Bournemouth, there's Brighton, there's Brentford, But what they seem to be able to do really well is not only just handle losing a big player. So, for example, if you talk about last summer, as in the summer before this one, summer 2024, they lose Solanke for big money. He was their top scorer and he was really their kind of talisman. I think 3 or 4 days after that, they had signed Evan Nielsen. And then knowing that Solanke was going to go for big money, I think that's when they also, around that time, signed Dean Huyson as well for like 12 million. They sold him on for God knows how much, and they maintained their standard. And not only that, they improved their league position. Yeah. That's really the challenge for teams of this size. Because if we're going to be totally honest about it, of course, given the history of the relative clubs mentioned, Bournemouth, Brighton and Brentford, they're all overachieving. Of course they are. Because Bournemouth, when Eddie Howe took over Bournemouth, they almost felt the league.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So of course they're overachieving. But it's interesting looking at these teams under these progressive managers, and we'll see what happens with Keith Andrews, and we'll see how it continues to develop with Fabian Hürzeler, and with Bournemouth, it's obviously Andoni Iraola, how they keep trying to find little ways of just inching that ceiling up higher and higher, because they're not realistically going to be serial winners of the Premier League or even serial Champions League qualifiers. I mean, if you look at, say, Forest came very close to forcing their way in there. Even if they had done, would they have been able to maintain it? Aston Villa couldn't.
I was going to say, look at the effort of Villa.
Yeah, so it's very, very difficult to get a seat at that top table and be able to fill your face as well.
But be inspired by Palace and go on a cup run. Do you know what I mean?
That's what you want next.
And that's what you want next. That's what I think with Bournemouth. They look like they can give anybody a game. But anyway, Jim, without further ado, let's have this question I've been gagging for you to ask.
Yes, Alex on Blue Sky asks, with long throw-ins, kicking the ball into touch from kickoff and Pep going back to being a fraud, is 90s football back?
I love that people are still on Blue Sky. Just doing their thing.
Yeah.
It's like a house party that's wound down. There's a few people in the kitchen still doing ket.
Yeah.
And
Massive
and
attacks
that's
on.
all it is. But so shout out to Alex for that. What was the question? I want listener.
The question is quite strange, right? So because I don't think long throws are particularly 90s. You know, when Rory Delap was making those long throws for Stoke, I don't think anyone was saying it was particularly like a throwback.
I think they had
Pep Guardiola won 15 trophies in the 90s as well. I'm not really sure I quite understand that part of the question.
Do you guys remember when Dave Challoner, who was the centre-back for Tranmere Rovers at the time, they were on a bit of a cup run.
With the towel.
And his hand towel, long throw-ins, that was very 90s. And that's where the genesis of it is, I think.
Yeah, but probably.
Fair. Wimbledon football is what it was known
I suppose
back then,
so,
wasn't
yeah.
it? Long balls and long throws and violent tackles.
Yeah, but I mean, as the generations move on, we would have said in our youth that it's very 1970s, very 1980s.
Yes.
And so people are not going to...
But also...
people who are 15, 20 years younger than us are going to have that.
Allow us the wider context, though, because he's also said, ball into touch from kickoff, all the rest of it. It's been a 90s summer we've just had. Because of Oasis and all the rest of it.
Yeah, that's...
you've had Oasis basically dominating the entire summer, and they're the most 90s band, really. And then you've got this stuff here that people are associating. People of our age probably that do remember the 90s are kind of associating this stuff. But I think what it is that, as we mentioned yesterday briefly, managers and teams are just looking to get an advantage. They're just looking to have a little angle here or there to work out how they can perhaps do something maybe the other team doesn't expect, or to in the case of like kicking the ball into touch from kickoff. I mean, that is a bit confusing. That does seem to be happening quite a lot. That's probably something along the lines of getting territory really
it's a tactical cycle, isn't it? It's about winning territory.
Helps you with the press maybe because you're already up there maybe. So in a way, they're all linked and related anyway. I think the long throws is maybe what I mentioned yesterday about the fact that centre-backs aren't as used to defending against that kind of stuff. So it's worth asking the question, right?
Which is why I think you may well see a little more of two up front, because
I'm gagging for that.
Well, centre halves. I mean, again, that's what I mean when you say, Luke, the point you make, which is a good one. What are defenders used to? Or what are they expecting? You're always a little bit of element of surprise or do things. Now, clearly, a ball in the box, head it away. Doesn't sound like anything that is going to come out of the blue for them. But with, say, if you started to see a little bit more of a stroke partnership, is if you occupy both centre halves and they have a man each, because they will have, so many defenders now would have grown up playing the game, and you've got two defenders marking one guy, really. I know they cover for the fullback and all that kind of stuff. So I wonder if you have that. I mean, the thing is, the tactical trends, they come and go. And obviously, Alex cheekily puts Pep going back to being a fraud.
Mental.
What happens is Guardiola reaches the top of the game and becomes one of the greatest managers of all time, doing his thing. And it seems like, he's discovered the cheat code. But what he's done is he's analysed it. Everything goes into Guardiola being Guardiola, and he produces some of the finest football that's ever been played. So people try and emulate that. Well, when Guardiola, his powers start to wane, no one's going to be... Guardiola's Guardiola. Nobody can do his routine better than
it's like
him.
Trump eventually dies.
Right.
No one's going to step in. They will, but it won't be the same.
Yeah.
It's a figurehead. It's a totemic head thing. It's a perfect analogy. It works exactly the same way.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean,
you're just upset because I said Trump.
You can understand why I've been thrown there.
The point you're making
very much a long throw.
Yeah. So they go in cycles.
The point you're making is a personality one. It's the fact that Guardiola is such a force of personality that his ideas have been able to win out and infect the whole world of football. Really, even down to the grassroots level.
Yeah. No, but what I was going to say is though that you then go on, and it's like, how do we then find how to deal with that?
Well, yeah,
Klopp
exactly.
was very successful at doing that at times.
It's created a set of conditions and therefore a set of environmental challenges, almost you might say, to overcome it. And I guess what we're seeing now with the idea of kind of more territorial football and more aerial stuff coming back into use and actually kind of being in fashion is, as you say, a response to that.
If you're not going to be able to do what Guardiola did again at the top of his game, you have to think creatively, right? What else can we do? And the focus is often on this thing, while other people are innovating over here. And eventually, as I say, when Guardiola's powers start to wane, the other ideas start to come up. And you can be influenced from the past. As Jurgen Klopp was. Jurgen Klopp always used to say that he never understood why, in England, we stopped doing the things that made particularly the Liverpool sides in the 70s and the 80s so successful. Pass and move, pressing and all the rest of it. He said he was massively influenced by that era. And he said, I never understood why English football started to try and sort of drift away from it.
So he brought 80s football back. The question is 90s football back?
And the answer is 90s football would officially be back when more than 2 teams play 2 up front, which is what happened at the weekend. So Brentford did it and Wolves did it. It wasn't very good. No one noticed. But Wolves did do it as well. And when it's more than 2, when we get over 10 teams in a Premier League weekend playing 2 up front, then we can officially declare the 90s open again.
I mean, there's a lot of exciting combinations there. Isak and Ekitike, Haaland and Marmoush, Gyökeres and Havertz, potentially.
Maybe.
I mean, there's the potential there.
Yeah, right.
There's always potential if you look hard enough.
Let's get Kane and Watkins up top for England. All right, coming up after this, Australia has got in touch with us.
Okay, our friend Amy's got in touch on email. Hello to you, Amy. After we talked about a plover that laid an egg on a football pitch in Australia. She says, plovers are actually terrifying. They aren't overly large birds, but they are aggressive and even have spurs under their wings. They always nest on ovals, which are, of course, the Australian rules football pitch, preferring primary school ovals for a reason we will never know. I think ovals are also used for cricket as well, maybe in Australia.
There's one in South London, certainly.
There is, absolutely, famously. Cycled past it yesterday. Yeah. And will protect their nest aggressively around a 50-metre radius.
50-metre radius is a big one.
For a small bird.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, by the way, you're saying plover, right? I believe in Australia they call them plovers.
That's up to them.
Yeah.
I'm not in Australia, am I?
I like that.
And nor will I be.
I've seen a plov.
She says the sound they make alone sends shivers down every child's spine.
Yeah, Jim, you've been rehearsing this. Come on, can you do it?
We should get it on the little thing.
Here's what they sound like.
It's not bad.
Oh, well, I was going to go with the old.
Very nice bird noise as well.
It's one of my best impressions. Though.
We have no.
It is good.
We have no knowledge about whether either of those are even vaguely similar to what
I'm quite sure
like.
that my one is maybe not relevant here.
He said, Amy just finishes by saying, the police aren't protecting the nest or the bird, but the civilian population. Plovers aren't actually plovers at all. They're actually masked lapwings. We call them plovers here for reasons we'll never know. Love all the way from Brisbane, Amy.
I've never been to Australia. And I know that it does exist because I know people who've been there and I know people who are from there.
And there was a Simpsons episode.
It doesn't fully feel like it's real. It does feel...
It's like Super Mario World. Everything you touch will kill you.
Yeah, indeed. And
That's
this is just further proof of that, isn't it? Have you ever been attacked by a nesting bird?
No.
I was on holiday in Mexico, and the place we were staying in had these amazing birds called grackles, who are really, like, you can feed them by hand. They've got loads of character. They make a weird little noise that sounds a bit like a kind of child's toy. Almost
looks like a crow.
They're brilliant. They're amazing. But on the last day of my holiday, I was sat around the pool, and one of them must have had a chick, because they were like just flying directly into the faces of everybody, literally dropping little rocks on people in the pool and stuff. They get very, very territorial. And this is like an Australian bird, so obviously you have to times it by 100 in terms of how terrifying it is. Probably poisonous.
Wearing a vest. Got a mullet.
Sounds terrifying.
And they're also driving utes, aren't they? But they were in Edinburgh. I don't know if it's still the same, but certainly in recent years, they had a problem in a particular place with seagulls.
Oh, you will do.
Defending their nests.
Bastards.
Like dive bombing people and stuff.
When I was in Australia waiting for a bus once, I was with a couple of friends, and one of them had their backpack on the floor at the bus stop. Big old backpack, because he's doing this backpacking thing. And when they went to pick it up, there was a huntsman spider on it, the size of a fucking side plate.
Right. Yeah, and they don't bite, do they? But they're aggressive for that reason. Or is it they're not poisonous, so they're quite aggy?
Yes, there's no need to be scared.
Yeah, no need to be scared. You should have seen me not being scared.
That's what I mean. They're aggressive, aren't they?
Yeah, that's what.
What do they like swear at you?
I don't know, but
what do they do if they don't bite?
They got loads of fingers to raise. So they're very sweary spiders.
Yeah, fair enough. I honestly thought and I wanted you to say, and a massive big bird grabbed the rucksack and flew off with it. I was like, oh, now you're talking.
No, Jim, you're asking me whether it's aggressive or not. You keep asking me that.
Yeah, he wasn't around to find out.
How long do you think I'm standing there? I'm telling you, it was about 10 centimetres. They're probably bigger than that even. It's like that big.
They may be aggressive, but they're not very fast at chasing people.
Yeah.
Well, they weren't that day.
Although I was also once we have to move on from this, but I was once in the Cook Islands, right? And they have these things in the Cook Islands called coconut crabs, right? Have you seen them?
No.
Have you seen how big they are?
No, I don't believe you. You've blown it up.
Bloody hell, right? They're so big, you can hear them walking.
No.
They're that big.
Really? Depends
they're
what they're
horrible.
walking on, though.
Look at that.
Ugh. Yeah.
It's kind of like a spider.
It's a crab, though.
Yeah,
I've
so
eaten
it's
a crab.
harder.
I've eaten a crab like that.
You wouldn't be eating that, I tell you.
I ate it for breakfast, Jim.
There's genuinely more chance of that eating you than you eating that.
That's not true.
You're only a little fella.
Yeah,
I'm bigger than that.
that could overpower you.
Yeah. Not this right peg, Jim.
Punt it.
Yeah, exactly. I once
Anyway.
I once saw an albatross in the Galapagos Islands, so up yours.
Thanks for your email, Amy.
And it was very, very polite.
It's not about you, it's about Amy. Jim, get us out of here.
Yeah.
Oi, Jim, come on. Final question.
Matt-
Let's make it a serious one. That was a bit of nonsense.
Matt's been in touch on X. Feels like it's been a while. Who is currently the hardest manager in the Barclays? Now, I think
We used to do this every season back in the day.
we need.
Yeah.
It's been a long time, though, and I think we need to show our work in this. Let's perhaps assume there's some sort of Street Fighter style knockout tournament.
I think it's Paul
determine
Plover is the hardest
Paul
one.
Straight away,
Go on, who you got?
I can give you a kind of little mini short list of the ones I think are worth a damn,
Yep.
if you like. Vitor Pereira,
Yes.
Agree.
Nutter.
Ange
Joe Pesci vibes.
Postecoglou,
Yep.
David Moyes,
Yep.
Daniel Farker,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
big head,
Can you imagine him sticking the head on you?
Arne Slot,
Yeah.
and I think that's probably about it.
I think that's a decent list. That's nearly matches mine.
Maresca's probably a dark
Yeah,
horse.
that's
that
what
was the
I
only
gonna
other
say.
one I was
You're
gonna say.
underrating Maresca. He's
Yeah.
got a sort of Bond villain, aquatic henchman thing going
Yes.
on. I
Yeah.
think he's probably quite tough as well. I think Marco Silva could be a little bit of a dark horse.
Wet blanket.
What I would like to see,
Hang on. He's not a wet blanket, but he's not going to beat up all those lot.
Yeah.
what I'd like
Okay.
to see in one of the early rounds is Ange v Farker. That's going to be a slugfest.
Yeah.
It's going to be sweaty. I think Ange will come out on top.
The size of heads on display.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Farker. I'm leaning towards Farker.
It'd be glorious in defeat.
I couldn't imagine
Be
David
emotional.
Moyes losing a fight.
No, same. Even at his age, 62 or whatever he is
Old
now.
man strength.
Definitely old man strength.
Pulsing through those veins.
Yeah.
Can I
just got
just-
a massive set of keys in his pocket. Like,
Yeah,
Just-
more
you know
ready.
what? The only reason David Moyes is stopping the fight halfway
Yeah.
through is just to go and straighten up his parking. Then he's coming back. He's coming back again.
Yeah,
Little breather.
Reassure the landlord that it won't get too bad.
Roll his own little cigarette.
Yeah.
Straighten up his parking, and then go back in with a
I
windmill.
think Thomas Frank. We talked about a pragmatist. I think Frank.
Frank's getting nowhere near it.
No, I think he could handle himself. But
No
I think,
way.
All right, fine. Vitor Pereira, I think he's that nutter, but I don't think he wins.
Vitor Pereira would eat Amarim
He'd bite
and
your
Silva
legs.
on the same day. Portuguese off. Just take them both out the same
He'd
day.
bite your legs off,
Yeah.
definitely.
Scott Parker has an old school sort of East End hard, and I think he'd go further than you might think.
Yes.
He's not going
No,
to
but I
bother
think
the winning.
It would be a
but he'll do
respectable
well.
finish.
No, for me, Scott Parker is sinister enough to have that reputation, but he sits at the back of a pub in East London, and a nice
Suit and
jacket with
tie
the
on.
collar up, yeah, and someone else just turns up with a shotty and just takes someone out. He doesn't get his hands dirty.
With a shotty.
He doesn't get his hands dirty. No way Parker's getting his hands
so
dirty.
who we
Can,
thinking?
can I just say before we settle on that,
Yeah.
Ruben Amorim might not be the hardest manager,
Correct.
might not be anywhere near it, but he has an untapped rage no one else can compete
know
with.
what?
He has so much fury to get
Jim,
out for
Farker would-
thousands of obvious
You're
reasons.
spot on. I'll tell you why Amarim's dangerous, simply because he's got nothing left to lose.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
He's got
he
nothing left
needs
to
to
lose.
let this aggression out.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
hates his players. He hates his kids. But it's
Yeah.
you he's going to be
He's
punching.
Liam Neeson in Taken, but he doesn't want his babies back.
Exactly.
He wants them further away.
Yeah, I'm not taking my babies
I
back.
think you've got to say it's Pereira, is Postecoglou.
Farker.
I think Farker.
Moyes.
There you,
I don't think those
Yeah.
two are going all the way.
For me, I'm whittling it down to Farker and Moyes. That's what I'm looking at.
and I think a big. Listen, you're not saying boxing. A good big guy beats a good little guy every time.
I think it's Pereira and Maresca. I really do.
Maresca, I think, is definitely worth. I think he's an outside bet for me, but he's definitely worth a punt.
Yeah, it's really hard to have this discussion without getting into regional-based stereotypes as well. So I'm really trying not to. I'm
Yeah.
really trying not
So
to.
you think
'Cause I've got
Pereira-
some views about the Italians when it comes to battles.
I think Farker though. If he sticks the head on anybody, see you later.
You cannot look around the Farker melon.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
impossible to look past it, quite literally.
Yeah.
But also in the context of this as well.
Yeah,
You're
he
going to
just-
do your fist damage hitting it.
Big time.
And I think as well, he
Got to work on the body.
despite his little voice, if you look at his head. And if he went absolutely postal, that would be so scary.
He's also spent a lot of his time as a player knocking about some quite unfancied lower league German teams
Yeah.
where it's going to be tough around there. I think that's part of it as well. There's no one else. I mean, we haven't talked about Slot. Slot's jolliness belies quite a serious contender, I think.
Well, I think Moyes or Farke would have Slot, but Slot I don't think would be a weakling by any stretch of the imagination. So
he's slapping him on his head. Farke be slapping him on his head.
I think Farke's too respectful for that.
Yeah, he might be.
Pereira's slapping him.
Big time.
Pereira.
Pereira will get in your head.
The final is Pereira v Farke.
Do you think? Not Moyes. Do you think just because of the age?
Yeah, get to the latter stages of a tournament like this.
I can't imagine Moyes losing a fight.
He's wheezing towards the end of the semi, though.
Because it all happens on one day, right?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. It's
Winner
like
stays
Bloodsport.
on.
It's
Yeah.
like the Jean-Claude Van Damme film,
Winner
Bloodsport.
stays on.
Yeah, definitely. I think Moyes runs out of steam.
What about Glasner? Bit of a Dalsim kind of vibe?
Nah.
Long limbs?
Nah.
All right.
He's not got it in him.
Nah, you're right.
Yeah, Glasner would be the kind of guy to say, I think he would respectfully say, appreciate you putting this tournament together, lads.
Yeah.
It's not for me.
Yeah.
I'm going to go and put my feet up.
Or one guy we haven't thought of, Graham Potter.
Oh, God.
Dear.
Although he got angry the other week,
He
didn't he?
did get angry, yeah.
He
sure
got
he
angry,
did.
yeah.
He got his wand out, Jim.
I don't think
That's not a euphemism.
Graham Potter would win a fight against a West Ham fan selected at random.
All right,
No,
let me
I
rephrase this.
think quite dramatically not.
No.
Let me rephrase this. Which Premier League manager will win at Quidditch? Or whatever they play in that film. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to
That film.
for the Football Ramble Mailbag, part of the Acast Created Network. I'm back tomorrow with Vision Pete, where we'll be reacting to the first Champions League fixtures. Arsenal are off to Bilbao and Spurs host Villarreal. Please do send us your responses, opinions and questions for next week's mailbag and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Before we go, Jim, you one final chance to fight the corner of Mikel Arteta?
Open letters
He
don't
has
count.
not got a chance.
Put your whiteboard away, Arteta. Bang!
Yeah. See that
Someone's
brain and
used
heart
that-
of yours? We're ripping that handshake
Farke's
apart.
using that whiteboard like a fucking chair in a wrestling match. Smashing it right and rearranging his head.
Yeah. I think Farke for me. Who are you going for? You got to pick one. Come on.
I'm going for Farke.
Jim?
It's Pereira for me.
Well, Farke wins 2-1.
Yeah.
On points.
Yeah.